What's up, everybody? This is Chris Surratt bringing you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of all of your vehicles. On today's show, we're going to talk about the mother-all bills that Trump has come out with that has some proposals in it that would help the car buyers in the near future. We're also going to talk about that plane crash over in San Diego and how our friendly skies are just not as friendly as they used to be. And last but not least, we're going to talk about Gilbert Arenas and his son Elijah as he deals with his son being in a crash in his Tesla Cybertruck, as Gil states that it was the Cybertruck's fault that the crash happened. Alright, so let's jump straight in. We're going to talk about the new tax bill that has come out from President Trump. And it has some great things in it. We've checked it out a couple of times. Some great stuff, particularly for, when it comes to tax deductions. There's some things in it about cutting SNAP and all these type of things that some people are extremely wary of. But when it comes to the car situation, he includes a $10,000 deduction on the purchase of new vehicles. So let's head over to Clinton Donnelly. Clinton Donnelly is a tax guy. You probably want to start checking him out if you can in the future. But he's going to talk a little bit about the $10,000 deduction, car purchase deduction that is in this new tax bill. Let's check it out.
The House Ways and Means Committee just put out a draft tax bill which includes a very interesting proposal for having the deductibility of interest for car loans. This is new. In the U.S., we don't get to deduct the interest on car loans. You can on a house and a personal residence, but not on cars. This is a very interesting proposal because it's limited to cars that have final assembly in the United States. So this would be, eliminating any foreign manufacturer who doesn't assemble in the U.S. Secondly, it has to be a first loan where the car has a lien placed on it. It can't be a cash loan or anything like that. The amount of interest you can write off in a year is limited to $10,000 of interest deduction. And this interest deduction basically reduces your total taxable income. And so it's very exciting that way. Also, the interest deduction of $10,000 is reduced if you have income in excess of $100,000, totally phased out at $150,000.
So it's more for, people who are not doing well financially. If you're over the $100,000 mark, which is the standard mark for most categories or statements of people where you are getting money, I guess. But of course, we all understand that at this point, you almost have to be making more than $100,000, specifically out here in California, in most areas like this, New York maybe. But it takes into consideration that the world thinks that the majority of people who make over $100,000 are doing well. So this tax deduction is predominantly for those people who we would consider are not doing well, or the middle class or the lower middle class, which is ironic because, why would the, people that are lower than middle class be taking out car loans in the first place? Conversation for another day.
For individuals, for married couples, that's from $200,000 up to $250,000. It is phased out. So the total amount phased out, the entire deduction goes away. It is interesting. This is a retroactive offer for cars purchased in 2025, and currently the proposal is that this offer will expire at the end of 2028. So it's only during the Trump administration's time in office. So obviously this expiring at the end of 2028 will be
So they're going to use this as a political conduit to make sure that whoever backs it, depending on how successful this tax deduction is and how many people get to take advantage of it and how much money is saved over the process of using it, they're going to use it in that next political arena for president to sway people to either who believe that it was a really good thing, they're going to say, oh, well, we're going to continue it. Or if it's a really bad thing, they're going to say, oh, well, we're going to get rid of this. So, it always leads back to the money. And it's always a situation where it puts you in a position where, even if people don't get to a point where they use this heavily, it'll become a political stepping stool in the future once the presidency opens back up.
Election year campaign, vote Republican, extend this deduction, if you will.
Right.
Very interesting. Let us know your thoughts about this. Would it affect your purchasing behavior? Would you sell a car to be able to take advantage of getting this new interest deduction? Please like, subscribe, and follow this video. It helps make sure that this video gets out to more people who are interested in this information. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right. So, Clinton Donnelly, great for tax help. Great for information like that, and it's one of those things where it's going to be extremely helpful. A lot of people, for people like me who sell cars, is going to be a boom, and we just have to learn how to take advantage of it. But it's aimed at those people who are having a harder time getting vehicles. It's aimed at those people who are not as financially strapped to purchase their next vehicle in the next couple of years. So it seems like a great thing. I don't see very many faults in it. The fact that people who are doing what one consider doing well, making over 100,000, 150,000, the fact that they can't take advantage of it is, kind of, that's not great. I mean, I would think that if you're going to put something like this into effect, you should be able to take advantage of it in most situations. But of course, we living in this world where we're trying to stop from making the rich richer. So that's what they're trying to do or trying to say in this proposal, that, if you are making a certain amount of money, then this shouldn't be that big a deal to you. And it should be restricted for those people who are not making as much money as you, specifically if you're making over 100,000 or 150,000 in this situation. I mean, it's a great thing. I hope that a lot of people take advantage of it. I hope that people who are buying cars from me definitely take advantage of it, because it's going to put some money in my pockets. But this the big beautiful act, or beautiful bill act, that they have out right now it has a lot of diversity in its wording. It has a lot of things that people are applauding. Of course, it has a lot of things that people are apprehensive about. Specifically, the cutting of SNAP vouchers, I heard, and, the people having to, to work to some degree to get their food stamps and all of these type of things, which, for a person who's not getting those things right at the moment, it doesn't affect me directly. But there, of course, I know a lot of people who are still on food stamps, who still live in Section 8 to some degree, so it would affect them. And, and that's going to be the argument that, if it's, all of these programs were meant to make people stronger. They were meant to make people, to give people an opportunity to advance themselves. You were supposed to only be on these things for a short period of time as you went to school, start to grow yourself, start to move up in your position at your job, start to get raises. And that's how the world was back in the day. And the world has changed so horribly to the point where, though that's not how these programs are anymore. These programs are situations where people will get on food stamps and be on food stamps for their entire lives. They'll get on food stamps and, be making, $3,000-$4,000 in food stamps when, they only have 2 children in the home. And then they just use it to sell the food stamps and all these other things. So this is one of those things where we're talking about waste, and we're talking about if people are still wasting these programs and taking advantage of these programs. And a lot of people are not. A lot of people, need these things. They're using these things in the correct way. But when we were growing up, these things were just there for a short time. When I was growing up, we probably was on uh, government assistance, to my knowledge, for early when I was a child, because I remember the cheese blocks. We had the cheese blocks in the crib. I remember those. We had the milk, the powdered milk. I remember that. That's some I remember having food stamps for a short time. But even my mother had said something to the point where we ain't supposed to be on this shit. We got to do things to get better, and of course she did. Got her degree. Got her position in the hospital and whatnot. So we got off of that stuff, and we moved up, and that was the point of these things. And of course, at this point, we're talking about where a lot of people are just staying on these programs, for their entire lives. And, these programs are meant to be used until you moved yourself above them. And then the next person up would get that program, and they would get those benefits, and they would move themselves up to the point where they didn't need them, and then so on and so forth. So everybody was getting an opportunity. And now we have a situation where people are just sitting on these programs and, using up their entire lives, and other people who deserve or need them are not getting an opportunity to use them. So I think that this big, beautiful bill act should curtail that to some degree. I'm not sure. I think that, everything has to be looked at and observed and fitted to make sure that everybody can take advantage. Okay? All right, so let's keep moving on. I was going to read the whole automotive news article, but, it's cool. We get the gist of it. It's not really straight like that. Okay, so next up, I wanted to speak on the San Diego plane crash that happened a little while ago. And the whole idea, and of course some new news came out that, the runway lights weren't on, all these other, storylines have happened. And I just wanted to breach this because how many airplane and helicopter accidents have we seen over the last couple of months around? And I was pretty much chalking it up to, just the advantageousness of the news cycle, and, getting more knowledge out through social media and news vendors and all these things. I was chalking it up to that. I was saying that, we were just in a situation where this probably, plane accidents were still happening, and we just wasn't in the know about it. I just realized something. It's crazy. Yeah, we just wasn't in the know about it. We just weren't getting. They weren't showing plane crashes on the news like they are now. That's what I thought it was. But that's not it. That is not it. We're seeing plane crashes on a weekly as of late. I've seen so many plane crashes. I've done a couple stories on plane crashes, not really car related, but it's travel related. It's mobility related, to the point where, we're questioning if, our friendly skies are even friendly anymore. So let's check out this story about this crash that happened over in San Diego recently. And we're going to talk about the friendly skies and how friendly they really are. Let's check it out.
Thanks for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. So if you've just been here with us over the last hour, we just got that update from the NTSB as we're learning a lot more about the deadly San Diego jet crash. So the NTSB was able to give us this update, putting this tweet up on your screen. We heard from the investigator in charge there in this media briefing, Dan Baker. Now, it was a relatively short update, but they were able to answer just a few questions that many reporters had. So if you hadn't heard of this just happened a few days ago. We know that there was a deadly plane crash that wreaked havoc there in San Diego for many military families living in that neighborhood. This happened in San Diego's Murphy Canyon neighborhood, and it involved a small Cessna Citation business jet. So this is right next to the Montgomery Gibbs Executive Airport. It's just west of that crash site. So we know that at least 3 people were killed. 8 others have been injured, according to local authorities. But the impact of that crash exploded into a number of fires sparked by jet fuel and downed power lines. Evans. I do want to now bring into the conversation here to help us understand exactly what we learned there in that press conference and putting the pieces back together as well. Captain Ross Amer, the former pilot. Captain, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox.
My pleasure.
All right, let's start off with the very basics. We heard that this was a small Cessna Citation business jet. I just want to get a sense of what this jet looked like, how it flies. Can you tell us a little bit about this aircraft?
This is one of the early versions of a successful series of private jets, the Citation 550. I believe this particular aircraft was built sometimes in 1985, so about a 40-year-old technology, but it's a reasonably well-built aircraft, old, but I'm not sure about the maintenance status of it, being a small owner-operator. Especially, I noticed that it was registered in Homer, Alaska, to a P.O. box number that usually turns on a caution light in my brain.
And so we're looking here at some of the damage that was left behind from this deadly plane crash, devastation all throughout the neighborhood. It did turn out that the people on the plane are part of the deceased, but no one on the ground was injured from that. Are you surprised to see with the level of damage that was left behind from this crash that no one else was hurt?
I normally don't believe in miracles, but this was a miracle because the way the jet crashed into just one side of the house and no one was hurt. As you know, this was sometimes in very early morning when everybody's home. Fortunately, we know nobody was hurt on the ground. And then, of course, the jet fuel running down both sides of the street caught every car that was on that street on fire. So this was definitely amazing that no one on the ground was hurt.
Yeah, it definitely is amazing. And it's just crazy. Look at this picture. Cars on fire. I'm just saying, it's crazy how many times we've seen this over the last couple of months. But let's finish it out.
All right, let's get into some of those updates as well that we heard from the NTSB. We do know that they were talking about some of the systems that failed. What can you tell us, Captain Amer, about those systems, and why is it so important that they're in place once these planes are in the air, especially these smaller private jets?
When you're operating into a small airport like Montgomery, and they don't have air traffic controllers 24 hours, obviously. They close the airport around 10 o'clock at night. And when the aircraft is operating in there early in the morning, like this was, about 4 a.m., obviously there's nobody in the control tower to tell you what the weather is. There is a automatic system, we call them AWOS for these small airports, that it's automatic weather observation, and it broadcasts on a certain frequency, tells you what the weather is. But unfortunately, at that moment, that particular system was out of service, and I don't know why. So the pilot did not know the actual weather in that airport. And as we know, there was pretty thick fog in Southern California on that early morning. So the pilot did not have a good understanding of the weather. He asks the air traffic controller, and air traffic controller gives him the nearby airport, I believe Miramar Naval Station weather, which was similar, but it was very foggy and visibility was low, ceiling was low. And there were too many mistakes, unfortunately. I think fatigue was a huge issue in this case. You know, they took off just about midnight from East Coast, made a fuel stop in Wichita, Kansas. And by the time they get to the West Coast, they had probably been in the air for about 6-7 hours. And then previous day. These all could be attributed to the crash.
And I want to ask you, just while we're wrapping this up, but most importantly, we heard that there was no flight data recorder there on the flight, but they weren't sure if there was one in the cockpit, a voice data recorder. How critical are these two systems for the NTSB and those other investigators who are looking into this crash to putting the pieces together so we can truly get an understanding of what happened and why the plane went down?
Having the voice and data recorders in any airplane and any accident is extremely important, although it's not required for this old jet and small jet. So I'm not sure if they had one. If NTSB says there isn't one, then unfortunately there isn't. But we do have recording of the conversation between the pilot and the air traffic controllers till the last minute, basically. That would help the investigators. The other thing that investigators would look into is why this pilot did not choose to use the instrument landing system, instead use what we call a VNAV system that doesn't have, in this particular case, has the localizer or not the glide path. And this pilot, for some reason, went way below the glide path, striking high tension wires short of the runway. So there was, like I said, there are too many holes in that Swiss cheese that we talk about in aviation that attributed to this crash. Obviously, I don't want to speculate, but from what we heard from NTSB and listening to the air traffic controllers, there were just too many bad decisions on behalf of this owner-operator. By the way, single pilot operation, that's another thing that raises caution lights. When in the middle of the night, you're tired, weather's bad, another pilot could have actually in the cockpit would have really helped.
And it's just certainly a heartbreaking story. And again, we got that update.
All right, so, and that's what I'm saying. It's why is one of the most important things that is done or has to be done when you're transporting people across the world on a plane? Why are all these mistakes being made? How is this owner-operated pilot getting away with all of these mistakes? Not having a co-pilot. Not using certain systems, not having certain systems on his plane. These all led to this accident, like the gentleman is saying. This is all part of it. He can't specify which one is the exact reason why this accident happened. And they didn't even, touch on the storyline that we saw where it's saying that the runway lights weren't working. But he did state that, and this is one of those small places where they don't have traffic controllers 24/7. It's early morning, so he didn't even really specify if the place did have traffic controllers. Talking about the weather system that they standardly use wasn't working and all these other things. And we have to wonder if these are some of the reasons why all these other accidents are happening. The helicopter situation over in New York, all these other plane crashes, the plane crash that happened over in Toronto. We are seeing plane crashes and helicopter crashes and planes and helicopters running into each other so consistently lately that they're a consistent story that we see. So it has to be creating a lack of a desire to fly. Do we see the stocks on planes and flights going down? I'm not sure about that, but I think they probably will because they're not presenting because it's fact. They're showing all of this problems with flying that could affect you. Now, let's face it, only a couple of these situations we're talking about are the main airlines that we use, the Americans, the Deltas. Those airplanes or airline companies seem to be okay, except for the situation over in Toronto where the one turned over. I think that was Delta. Memory served me correctly. But flying has become this big storyline that is starting to be scary. Starting to be a situation where people have to start questioning if they should be flying all the time. And I was just thinking about, and I want to enter in some interesting convo to this. I was watching the Fat Joe and Jada show, and Fat Joe was speaking on, his lack of a desire to sit and coach on these planes. But he said something more interesting at the end. So I want to watch this, and I want to talk about this because I don't know if this is true. I mean, it kind of makes sense, to be totally honest with you. But I just don't know if it's a true statement. But let's check this out, and then I want to talk about it real quick, and we'll get to the main story.
What do you feel about flying coach?
I hop on a jet, boo. I hop on the coach for a short flight, like 31E.
You do it.
A quick one, yeah. I watch a few Law and Orders, I'm there.
I can't do it. I'm not
2
saying
hours?
No. This is part of my prayer every day. God, please don't put me in coach. God, please keep me in first class.
First floor seats, now first
No,
class.
I'm telling you the truth. What you want me to do? I gotta expect to find the things in life. It's hard being number one, but somebody gotta do it. The one time I had to fly coach, I sat next to the hillbilly gyms, that Beverly Hillbilly. When I tell you these kids was climbing over my shoulder, some kid threw another kid a bag of potato chips. Hey, John! Shit hit my head. Kids climbing over my shit. It's a different type of atmosphere back there. I was praying. I said, God, please, Lord Jesus, I do never want to be on this again. And let me tell you something. I also believe cheaper airlines like Spirit, Southwest, and all them, they pay for fucked up routes out there. Like they pay for the potholes. They shit always like this. You ever got on a Spirit? They shit like this. I think they pay. All right, what's the wackest level? 34,000 feet. It's cheaper, yes. They buy that route, and your shit be like this all the time. You get there safe, but your shit be like this.
They got how come routes in the air? It's the air.
So, I mean, and that's the question, because I remember, I've used to fly even more than I do now, I would say, but I still fly pretty consistently, and right now I fly American Airlines most of the time. I'm an American Advantage guy, and and I do a lot of first class. Don't get me wrong, I'll jump on a coach flight. I don't care about that. I'll sit in the back. It's not that big a deal, but I do enjoy flying first class. So I don't have the hang up that Fat Joe has about flying in coach or anything like that. But my question is that last statement, is that the idea that other airlines, buy cheaper routes, because, and I question that because, I remember, being on other flights. I remember being on a Southwest flight, or I even say a JetBlue flight, or something like that back in the day. And I just remember that there was some damn turbulence. There was in a lot of them cases, there's a lot of turbulence. Now, mind you, I'm going from the West Coast to the Midwest standardly, and you're going to catch some turbulence over Colorado or stuff like that. But I honestly, over the last couple years of flying, I don't remember having the horrible turbulence that I had when I was flying really cheap back in the day, when I was just grabbing that really super cheap flight, that was super coach, and whatever, it was super cheap, but there was turbulence. I remember getting, turbulence to the point where I'm getting, kicked out of my chair a little bit. I don't remember that now. I don't, is there less turbulence when you fly first class? I don't think so. But over the course of the last couple of years of me flying, I just don't remember the turbulence. So, I mean, does that put in a situation where Fat Joe might be saying something that's true, that you could buy, because, they always say when you're flying, we're going to, get up to a certain height so we can go faster, and we're going to get up to a certain height to avoid turbulence. What he's saying, it could be super true. What he's saying could be super true, and we just don't know. He might have spilled some beans right there that honestly we didn't understand or we didn't know. Truthfully, he might have. So, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Last but not least, I want to venture into this story. This is a really important story to me, and because I talk a lot about EV vehicles. I talk a lot about Teslas. I talk a lot about Cybertrucks. And my thing about it is that I still continuously say that the necessary amount of research and development, and people always get this wrong, and I try to correct people on this. People always say research and development, which is probably the true statement, but the statement should be, guys, it should be research and development. And I say that because I really truly believe that there's an immense lack of research and development of these vehicles. The desire to get these vehicles out so quickly and get them to the public and get those dollars back from selling you these cars is putting a strong lack of importance on the research and development so that bad things don't happen when you're driving these vehicles. So today we're talking about Gilbert Arenas' son, Elijah Arenas' car accident in his Tesla Cybertruck. And the consensus is, and even Gilbert Arenas' consensus is, that it was the Tesla malfunctioning that caused the accident. So that's where we're going to venture into. We're going to check out the news report on the accident. Then we're going to, I was going to watch the whole Gilbert Arenas interview up on Up in Smoke, but just to get you guys out of here, get you guys back out here enjoying this beautiful California weather, we're just going to watch his portion where he talks about the accident itself and how it was caused. Okay, so let's check it out. First, let's check out the news report on the accident, and we'll go from there.
A rising basketball star from Chatsworth High in a coma tonight after a terrifying crash involving a Tesla Cybertruck. 18-year-old Elijah Arenas, the crown jewel of USC's incoming recruitment class. Tonight, his hoop dreams are in question. Fox 11's Ed Laskos is live in Winnetka with the very latest for us. Ed?
Laura, you talked about it. We're learning more about this terrible crash. We're also learning a lot more about the terrible crash and the man behind the wheel of that Tesla Cybertruck, that crown jewel of the local basketball scene, Elijah Arenas. Let's start with the crash itself. First of all, the security video. Let's take a look at it. It shows the impact to the right of your screen as that Tesla Cybertruck slams into a huge tree. This on Colbert Ave, just in Winnetka, right around the corner, huge tree. And then some cell phone video here moments after the crash. There's a water geyser because that Tesla runs right through a fire hydrant and then slams into that big tree. And if all of that's not bad enough, that Cybertruck starts to burn. They quickly put out the fire, pull out the driver, and now we know it is 18-year-old Elijah Arenas, the crown jewel basketball scene from Chatsworth, one of the rising stars, one of the biggest college recruits of all the major college programs in the entire country. You know his dad, too, the former NBA All-Star Gilbert Arenas. And to add irony to the terrible tragedy, just a couple days ago, about a week ago, Elijah came out saying that he had just made a commitment. He was going to play for the Trojans. USC as a freshman. Now all of that bright future in jeopardy because of the crash. Let's listen to this neighbor turned first responder turned witness. Listen.
So I ran out of the house and I saw it was a huge fire, and it was a Cybertruck hit by the tree, and the fire hydrant was blowout. So I called right away to 911 and reported, and it was a very bad and huge accident.
And this from USC outposting, it reads, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with Elijah and his family following this morning's accident. Please keep him, his teammates and friends, and the entire Arenas family in your prayers." Stop quote. Is back out here now. Everybody asking about it. The condition. Well, first responders told us that Elijah listed as stable. They said there appeared to be no broken bones, but the big concern was smoke inhalation because that Tesla started did the burn, lots of toxic, caustic smoke. They pulled him out of there, and that is perhaps why he's been placed into a medically induced coma at this point, dealing with the after effects of all that smoke inhalation. But again, it's an entire community, basketball community, Trojan community, everybody out with their prayers tonight, hoping for the best for this young man. For now, we're live here, Laura. Back to you on the West Side.
Ed, I would imagine in a situation like this, people have been stopping by the crash point and talking about it. What are you hearing?
Actually, the only folks who were coming by were the neighbors, believe it or not, that we saw, because the tree has a lot of scarring from the fire itself. It's a huge, probably a eucalyptus tree, I'm thinking, and then the fire hydrant all ripped off there too. But they were coming by, the neighbors, talking about it. And that nice lady who helped us as one of the eyewitnesses, the first lady to call 911, actually, she actually said that Gilbert, Elijah's dad, came by a couple of hours after the crash and wanted to thank her personally for looking after his son and calling 911 to get the first responders to the scene.
We certainly hope for the best for that family. Thank you so much, Ed.
All right, so it's one of those situations where we just gotta feel for Elijah. Just hope for it that he makes a great recovery, and we get to see him in the NBA, because that was the goal, and that's what we expect to be soon. Maybe a year or two in USC. But the prayers, he'll be fine. I think everything is saying that he will be fine. But the point that we're here is that because Gilbert Arenas is under the impression that it was the vehicle that caused the accident. He said that the steering wheel went limp, and that was caused the accident. And it was just one of those things that I've talked about a lot on my show, is that these vehicles, we just don't know enough about them, and there's situations where we're just not prepared. So let's check out Gilbert Arenas talking about the incident and talking about how he feels about what happened. And this is TMZ.
Long story short is, the car, malfunctioned on them. The steering wheel went limp and ran right into a tree. But once he got his personality back, which is once they took the drugs out of him, right? Our jokes came back, and man, boy, you almost went extra crispy on me, man. Right? You almost went extra crispy, dog.
Because you said that those windows are bulletproof. He couldn't break the window.
He couldn't break the window. And
so he was stuck in a car that was on fire.
Yeah, and I had to, I have his phone. I had his phone, got his phone. So I seen that, when people are like, oh, he fell asleep. I'm looking at, he's on the phone, right? He's on the phone with 911. I'm trying to get that call. He was on the phone with them for 10 minutes. So I know he was at least in the car for 10 minutes, right? And, it's, once he started, talking and, doing all that, just realized he couldn't break the window, start doing all the back search on the car. And, it's, if you're a parent and your teen has this car, you might want to put a hammer in that joint.
Something to be able
something that can break the window, because physically
not strong enough.
He said he was trying to kick the door, the window, and he couldn't. And I said, I told him, I said, man, I'm gonna just be honest with you, because when he got home, we had flowers for him, and I gave him that speech. I said, listen, you're a lucky one to see this.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't get to see the flowers and how everybody reacts when something happens. So you get to witness what the world did when you was sleep, when you was in an induced coma. So this is what's supposed to make you great, that you watch life that could have just ended, right? You can't take this for granted.
All right, and this is my whole thing with most EV vehicles, and a lot of this is about the design and how these cars are created. And there's some great ones out there, and I don't want people to sit here and act like this is me on a crusade against Tesla or Cybertrucks or Elon Musk, because I'm a fan of Elon Musk. I'm pretty much a fan of Tesla. But I do still have fears about EV vehicles, and a lot of them because of situations like this. They put these situations in these vehicles where you can be locked in them. You could be not have the ability. This is a strong kid. He should have been able to kick that window out so he could climb out. He was trying to kick the window out. And this is, and at the end of my rant about this, I'm going to talk about some safety things that I've talked about for a while. Okay? My thing is that these cars are going to start to come hard and fast. And they are not getting the complete research while they're being developed that they need. And they're going to put people in certain situations. And what we're going to find, because we're in a world where they have this ultimate desire to have the roads completely full of EV vehicles, we're going to get to a situation where there's going to be a lot of EV vehicles that are made that they're going to jump, they're going to skip some steps. They're going to avoid certain things because they want to make these cars affordable. They want to make these cars available to those people who don't have a lot of money. And those cars are going to come with certain hangups because they're going to lack in the research and development, and they're going to lack in the safety features that you're going to need to keep people safe in these vehicles. I am not a fan of recessed handles. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of the lack of an inability to open a door from the inside. Not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of an electronic control on all parts of the safety mechanism that unlocks and locks these vehicles. I'm not a fan of it because these are the things that will stop you from being able to exit the vehicle in dangerous circumstances. One of my biggest things, and I'm just going to finish this up really quickly, just want to first pray for Elijah. I pray that you have a complete recovery. I pray that you have a great accomplishments over at USC, and I cannot wait to see you in the NBA. Gilbert Arenas is fantastic hooper. He was hooping with a great time for me. He has a great show on Gilbert Arenas, so please check that out. Please check out Up in Smoke. Barnes and Stacks have a great show out there. There's a lot of great podcasts, guys, that you have to check out. So, in closing, this is what I'm going to say. With all of these new vehicles and situations like this, like Gilbert has said, I had already purchased everybody one of those window breakers for their cars. All my people, my family have those. I got a deal on some, bought some for everybody. Everybody has one. It's almost a necessity in these cars because of certain situations. Specifically in these new cars, bulletproof glass, it's not something that every person's going to have. Every person's going to have to worry about. That in itself is a separate thing. But I've always said this, and this is a safety features that if somebody wants to steal from me and add into these cars, so be it. Make your money. Just give me credit to some degree, okay? I think all cars should have a manual way to roll the windows up and down. It's simple. I've seen it. I created one in one instance, for a car that we had built, that we took out of junkyard and we had built it. We just couldn't figure out a way for the windows to stay up. And I just created a little latch lever and a little turn bot that would, make this little set of ratchets go up and push this window up. It was an old car, super old car, but it's extremely small little lever. And I say that you could create this extremely small lever, and with all of the leverage and technologies that you have, you can create this small lever that's right underneath the door handle, right underneath the door handle that turns, okay? And with technology, it could create a spear that pushes the windows up and down when necessary. In most cases, you could even create it to the point where only rolls windows down. It's a safety mechanism for so many reasons, because if there's any situation where your window, the electronics stop working on your window and that window can't go up and down, there's just so many situations where that's bad. Even a situation where you're in some extremely hot place and you don't have air conditioning, and you need to roll your window down just so you can get air in the car, so you don't die of heat You know what I mean? So, very extremely simple thing that I would say is that every car, every car, every car, specifically these EV cars, most cars with electric roll up and down situations. I say this all the time. I would want a car that has less electronics because, of course, it's going to be cheaper because less things to fix, but it's going to be safer to some degree. And what I'm saying is that we should create a situation, and this is be very extremely helpful for this Elijah situation. It can be extremely helpful for many situations, specifically in these newer model cars that are designed that the windows are going to be completely electrical, that the systems are going to be completely electrical, because with these vehicles relying so much on electronics, all you got to do is lose power and everything's bad. All you have to do is lose power and everything's bad. Have you ever seen one of these brick Teslas that you have to try to jump start, or a Tesla is sitting in such a horrible position in a garage or anything like that, and it's brick, and to figure out some way to start it, it's almost impossible. You have to get the tow truck, you have to get somebody to pull it or push it, and it's in park, so the wheels are not going to move. It's such a horrible situation. We have to, with this new advantageousness of being completely electrical and depending completely on electronics in our vehicles, we have to put in these safety features that are not electronic that we can use when electricity goes out. Because we have to understand, people, that electricity is not finite. There's a situation, there's a world we can understand that we could lose electricity. Portugal lost power a couple of weeks ago. And I couldn't even watch my favorite YouTuber because he had lost power over in Portugal. You think we're immune to that? I'm telling you, the minute that the world is sitting on a situation where we are even 51% of the cars on our roads are EV, we're gonna have a power problem. I guarantee it. The minute that over 51% of our cars on our roads are EVs, we're gonna have a power problem. And we just don't have the infrastructure for these EVs. I say this all the time. But I'm starting to go too far into the rant. It's time to get up out of here. It is beautiful. It's Cali Roots. Probably go see T-Pain tonight. And I hope y'all have a good time too. I'm Chris Surratt. Please like, share, subscribe. Hit me in the DMs if you have any questions. And I'm out of here. Peace.